My name is Misty. I'm the COO of Culturati. And if you're not familiar with Culturati, we are a community of C suite leaders, scholars, investors, and other executives who practice culture building and share our playbooks, improving performance, driving success, and helping employees in our communities thrive. We host open, candid conversations around the country, and at our annual summit, we curate and create important content based on the latest research. And I am just watching who is filing in now. Welcome. Thank you. Well, just a quick intro of Shaquille, and I'll let him do the full spiel. But Shaquille is a dear friend, advisor. He's part of our steering committee, chair of our Culturati AI task force, and our moderator for today. And our Culturati AI task force is a relatively new development focused specifically on the perspectives of CEOs and CHROs and how AI influences culture. Um, Around three buckets primarily. That's automation, augmentation, and agency. And I'm looking forward to a really robust conversation between Shaquille and our two knowledge partners, Microsoft and McKinsey and Company. So I think we're at a good
Excellent.
place now. I'll let you take it away, Shaquille.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Misty. Before we start, I don't know if people can read this on the screen, but I will tell you what it is. This is 2021, before I was involved with Culturati as much. And whenever I pick up a new notebook, and I'm very particular about writing things down, especially after meetings and all that. So whenever I pick up a new notebook and there's a notebook per different subjects and everything else, this one I just wrote saying culture is not a set of beliefs, it is what you do. It ends up being what you do. And I have no idea, since it's been so long, I have no idea why I wrote that, how I wrote that. But whenever I pick up a new notebook, I kind of put a note on it, whatever is in my head at that time. So it was very appropriate when we were talking with Culturati that I've been started using this book, this notebook, and having my notes in there. This is third in our series with Culturati and AI. I have done two webinars before with two of my esteemed friends and colleagues out of Austin, Brett Hurt, CEO of Data.World, and Chris Heim, CEO of Indeed. And we talked about the implications of AI, especially it was earlier during this time, about similar time last year, and we talked more about what are the implications to the work culture overall. What are we seeing from the adoption of Gen AI and everything else that has come through? And since that time, we have seen the hype of Gen AI build as much as possible in any technology adoption cycle so far. And we have come to the point where I believe the hype is maybe at its peak, and we want to see some value out of it. And whenever we have technology adoption, the value we are seeing is more this time from consumers. And this has happened only once before with iPhone or smartphones, at the advent of iPhone and smartphones, where the consumers were ahead of the enterprises. And we are seeing this similar flow again, where a lot of consumers seem to know more about Gen AI and how they're using it individually versus what is being done on the enterprises with going beyond just doing content creation. I'm trying to write a paper, I use Gen AI, and then move forward with it, right? And to discuss this, I thought we wouldn't get a better panel than what we have done before. And I have two esteemed colleagues from Culturati. Charlotte is a senior partner with many different practices within McKinsey. And she has been working with some of the big names in this space in terms of advising them and working with them in adoption of generative AI and AI as such as a whole. And then I have Matthew Duncan, who has a really cool title, Head of Future of Work at Microsoft. Between Matthew and Charlotte, I thought we would have a really good conversation about where are we going with this technology in the enterprise space. How are people using it? So I'll let Charlotte and Matthew introduce themselves a little bit more, and then we'll jump straight into questions.
Sure. I mean, thank you for the introduction, Shaquille. I'm Charlotte Relier. As Shaquille mentioned, I'm a senior partner at McKinsey. I do a lot of my work at the intersection of people and organizational performance and digital and analytics, and have been spending a bunch of my time as of late working with clients and companies to think about how is Gen AI reshaping the work and the workplace, and how can companies actually start to get value from generative AI. So I'm excited to talk to you about that today. And I will pass it
over. Good morning. Greetings from over here in Seattle, Washington. Pleasure to be here today. As Shaquille mentioned, yes, I focused on the future of work. So what does that really mean? Well, it is a transforming question that we're dealing with every day. I have the privilege of really thinking through sort of specifically how AI is affecting work. And we do that by going out and really constructing some really key research as we look across the globe, 31,000 individuals. With our Work Trend Index, we're really trying to understand the patterns and what's changing in the minds of leaders and workers when it comes to AI and its effect on work. And we're doing some great lab studies. And you know what? It's an evolution, and can't wait to get into the conversation because we are learning, just like everyone else, just how transformative this is. But it definitely has, challenges with every opportunity.
So when we were looking into this topic, right, you both have been publishing and talking about how enterprises are going beyond and using generative AI. So I want to start with Charlotte. You have some really good case studies and findings based on several surveys that you have done within the enterprise space.
Absolutely. Well, so we have, I think you said it right. I mean, we've done research on a number of different on multiple different institutions and employees. And what we've learned is that, about 91% of employees are using generative AI regularly, and they are excited about the use of generative AI. They are no longer nervous about what it can do their job, but see the potential. Whereas about only 13% of the companies we surveyed have implemented multiple use cases. And what we're hearing from our clients in conversations is, this is great, I've heard all the hype, but I'm not actually seeing the value. And in many cases, we're investing a ton in data science and sort of other areas that are going to help us, implement technology and tools as well, but we're not seeing the value. And so what we're finding from companies that actually do see the value is that they are focusing not on the deployment of technology or a tool, but actually on reshaping the operating model. Because ultimately, even if an individual frees up more time or is more productive because they've been able to, research a topic before going to a, customer meeting, for example, or get other, insights that sort of free up the time that they would spend, they still continue, if the rest of the sort of workflow and the rest of the operating model doesn't change with them, then there's no way to actually extract the value. What I heard somebody say recently was the beneficiary of that is our dogs, our pets, and our family, because we can spend more time petting the dogs, but we're not necessarily, generating value out of the freed up time or the increased productivity gains that individuals are seeing. So our conversations with clients have really been about changing like taking a domain, for example, and thinking through holistically, how do you actually think about the end-to-end workflow that's changing? What are the implications for the roles, the talent, the teaming, that is actually going to be able to deliver that new workflow, and then ultimately what skills they need to have. And taking holistically, that's how you start to transform the operating model. And again, I think the idea being that this is not about tool deployment, this is about operating model changes that are enabled by technology. But Matthew, I know you've also got some great examples and ideas on this as well.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't agree more. I definitely think the conversations that I'm having have to do with sort of how do we operate differently in this moment. I mean, I like to shape it by first saying, look, back to your point, Shaquille, like this was an onslaught with, really generative AI. We started just testing it and using it. And, I think it really was a consumer breakthrough, right? We saw that in the numbers. And what we saw in that first phase, in that first 12 months, is just a ton of excitement. And that excitement was about like, wow, this is actually something powerful. I could have this natural language conversation with this technology. And it was doing some reasoning behind the scene. And that was aiding me to like plan my vacation or, strategize on a golf outing or whatever that might be. And we started to see the usage of that. I think in the last 12 months, where we've really been focusing on was, yes, how is this going to change individual productivity? And, frankly, we've proven that there's been some really great breakthroughs with that. We do a work trend index, which goes out to 31,000 individuals across 31 countries to really understand sort of what work is doing, what they're doing in work, how AI is applying to their daily work tasks. And what we found was 90% of them say it saves them time. 85% say it helps them focus on more important tasks. And 84% says it helps them, even be more creative. So we saw that initial time savings, creativity, and effort is actually breaking through. And I think you see that in the creation of documents, the synthesizing of all this information you can't find anywhere. And, frankly, I don't know about you all, but my inbox, my chat, there's so many channels, there's so much info. It's a deluge. We just, as humans, can't even keep up. So I do think the generative AI promise has hit well when it comes to individuals. The question that you raise, though, is what do we do with that extra time? And is that really laddering up to having greater business impact for the organization?
Right. I think there's a question also, but I wanted to focus on similar type of a flow. Are there any innovative use cases in certain industries? I know Charlotte published something on the retail industry and the adoption of generative AI within that space. So can you talk more in detail within some of the innovative use cases that you are seeing within this adoption cycle?
Great. So a lot of what we're seeing, and by the way, I actually was going to give a little bit of a couple of McKinsey examples of how we're using it specifically, but a lot of what we've heard, right, is much of the focus of generative AI has gone into how do we improve, the interaction model with customers? How do we improve the product offerings? How do we improve sort of our ability to drive down bugs or drive down or like improve manufacturing services and so forth. But what we're seeing is maybe these are a couple of different examples are how is it actually making the employees more productive in the work that they do? And so maybe I'll give one external example because this has been they've been quite public about this. One is Walmart, where Walmart has basically said, look, we believe in the tech enabled employee experience and customer experience. And so they focused on all of their use cases around how do we make the customer experience better and how do we make the employee experience better. And in early 2004, they launched a tool called My Assistant, for example, that lets they rolled it out to 50,000 employees, that enables them to interact with internal systems, whether it be HRIS or finance systems and so forth, to be able to get information much more quickly and free up time that they spend trying to figure out, their own time, expenses, data, days, et cetera, and repurpose that time towards sort of more productive behaviors. They also rolled out a tool for frontline workers in the stores to basically help them understand how to, engage better with customers and sell better, and give them the tools to help both, identify what opportunities were for, helping the customers find the right products, but also restocking and reshelving and figuring out kind of how to where the sort of biggest pockets for growth were, and therefore helping them, do the ordering and so forth. So there's a whole range of things that they're doing for the internal employees. Within McKinsey, as a professional services firm, our employees spend a tremendous amount of time doing research and concision and preparing to understand kind of what the baseline is for certain companies or industries and so forth, in order to then do sort of the value-added problem solving and work with our clients to help them, solve their issues. By what we've done is we've rolled out something called Lily, which is our internal system that basically taps into our corpus of internal knowledge. Of course, there's a huge amount of parameters that we've put around it to ensure confidentiality of data and protection and so on and so forth, so that there's no sharing of confidential data across firewalls from different teams. But ultimately, what it does is it enables our employee base to, instead of interviewing tons and tons and tons of internal experts and spending a ton of time doing a bunch of research to get up to speed, they can get up to speed immediately in minutes, and then thereby, really spending their time solving the problem versus researching what the problem is, if you will. And so that's been, and we've got a bunch of research out there that talks about our Lily, in case it's helpful to folks, and we have it on our website. But we've really seen basically, I think something like 20% improvement in content quality and accuracy. Those that are using it, and we have about 72% of our consultants using it, are saving 30% of time on the information gathering and synthesis up front. And we are closing in on, we're about 500,000, prompts per month that we're seeing. So that's been a huge use case for us. And then a second place is, and we see a lot of this within sort of the talent life cycle within HR, a ton on, about 30% of what we see on the sort of talent life cycle is within recruiting. So sourcing, assessment, and onboarding. And we have been starting to employ generative AI to help us move away from just role-based hiring to more skills-based hiring, which enables us to open up our pool of candidates, create more diversity, look for people with the right skills rather than just necessarily the right credentials. And we've been able to use generative AI and special sort of games and tools that we're engaging with prospective hires to really get much more detailed sort of observation on those skills that will help us, make more informed decisions. So those are just a few places where we're seeing it help the in productivity and help the employees from an internal perspective. But Matthew, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Can I ask you a quick question, Charlotte,
Yeah.
before we jump in? So to get the scale of Lily, how many employees, and maybe people are not familiar with this, that's why I want to make sure that they understand the scale. How many employees does McKinsey have? And do you track the usage of your internal tools? And maybe what are some of the implications from that, right?
Yeah, so we have about 45,000 employees, and about 72% of our employees are using the tool. Whether it be, assistants that are helping use the tool to basically better schedule and create opportunities for their, the consultants they're working with, whether it's the consultants themselves that are tapping into the, corpus of insights and data, or whether it be, folks that are in different parts of McKinsey that are, we have, for example, thousands of data scientists and developers and so forth, and designers. So, folks that are using it in their day-to-day,
usage
work as well.
Right. And how long have you been using the recruitment tool?
The
The
recruitment tool
talent management tool that you mentioned.
the recruitment we've been testing actually for several months now in different parts of the globe. So it's not yet fully at scale, but absolutely, you know, have been testing it.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, great. Matthew, you are joining in with some more data on this, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we break it down, the question I always get asked by leaders is, okay, where do we start? Right? So back to what Charlotte was mentioning, look, we think there's tremendous value in information workers, just helping them get through the sort of noise in their day, the creativity, saving time. Okay, check. You know, there's some really great value proof points there. But then how do I start to really target the business and where do I go? And what we found was there's like a couple core areas that are really getting great traction. One is customer service and support. So Charlotte started to mention that really there's some really great innovation, and we're seeing customers really dive into how do I change that customer experience, and starting with that service and support. I'll give you an example. So even in our own Microsoft Customer Service and Support Center, which is one of the largest contact centers in the world, you know, they sat down and said, great, if we have multiple processes that we want to focus on, how do we just find one, break that process down, which was support response, those tech support individuals that are responding, how do we take down the steps? And within each step, how do we understand sort of what is the use of AI, AI with human, and just human? So you kind of really start to break it down so you can start to understand what are those things that are going to truly augment that human interaction. If you take a customer support rep, we're thinking about everything from training, getting that rep up to speed, the knowledge they need to like know at their fingertips to respond quicker and more effectively. It really becomes that assistant. And then you think about the AI is also in this case, also automating some of the steps. So if you can think about how to use this more agentic technology to actually do some of the steps that humans were doing, then you're making the process more streamlined. So it's a combination of really being, in this case, co-pilot as the assistant, augmenter, as well as the automator. And yeah, we're pretty excited. So as you know, as you think about this contact center, which is all over the world, you know, they have tens of thousands of agents. They're already achieving 12% reduction in average handling time, a 9% increase in cases and chats managed by support agents, and a boost in resolution of very complex cases. And so, really honing in on customer service and support, we're seeing a lot of innovation. And ultimately, I ask, you know, clients to think about what is the future of this function? What if you had a magic wand? What do you want to really innovate with? Because this is a moment to reimagine. So it's not just adding this AI technology to improve what you're doing today. It's actually thinking about how AI is going to reimagine the whole process itself. And you know, that's just a great case study of like it's going to benefit the humans that are part of that process, and it's going to create a better experience because we all struggle with calling into a contact center and not getting what you want. There's a lot of times I just want to self-service myself and make that really in a natural way with conversation to get the answers that I really need.
Excellent, excellent. So, how like is this live at Microsoft right now, or is this something that is being piloted around?
No, absolutely. Yeah, this is already being utilized and is being sort of fueled and measured. We have something we call customer zero. We're actually, you know, not just talking the talk, we're really walking the walk relative to sort of how we do that. So
It's gone
every
beyond
function in the
eating your
organization
own
is
dog
learning.
food, right? So
Exactly. We call it drinking the Prosecco or what have you. But yeah, we need to understand how this technology can, accelerate the business goals that we have and then reinvent and create new opportunities. And we're learning. I mean, it's a road of learning, trial and error, and experimentation, because it's also, this technology is changing rapidly. So just trying to keep up with it is a whole nother process.
right. No, that's actually very true in terms of the overall. So two themes I'm hearing from you both is one, the fact that it may still have the flavors of content generation or code generation in it, but it is about the innovative use cases that they're being used for. In your case, very specific customer contact center is able, generative AI has been able to go through all the cases before. It's acting in a way, customer rep also, and then being able to help other reps close out tickets sooner, right?
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from the McKinsey point of view, it seems like it is helping with the overall delivery of services that McKinsey is doing, especially with Lily. And from what I understand, Lily was even in like at least in part developed without the Gen AI spaces too, as a more of a knowledge management tool. Is that correct? And then it got added with the Gen AI, or?
Well, no, we had something that we called No, which or
Okay.
still have, which is our basically repository of knowledge, sanitized knowledge and insights that have been approved by the practices and so on and so forth. What Lily is it's entirely generative AI based, and it taps into that corpus as well as approved external sources as well, in order to help actually do specific and specific things like help a team get up to speed and do research, or help identify opportunities for project management, or synthesis and concision of some of the insights we've created. One thing on the Lily, just of note, and one of the things that was, a big lift for us was we are tapping into data and content that is not just purely, it's not just like text, right? This is PowerPoint that are like things that are categorized differently. So all sorts of different media and different ways of actually capturing the content. So it's been really like, it's been learning and learning and learning continually through all of the sort of testing and prompts that we've been doing and the fine tuning in order to generate that data out of a really sort of diverse set of content sources.
So multimodal content sources, video, audio, PowerPoint decks, various artifacts from previous engagements, and everything that's out there, including a lot of databases, I'm sure, right? Financial information and everything else on that. So. Excellent. So in terms of this same thing, when you started on Lily, and I want to spend a little bit time on this, because a lot of time what people ask is, what are the barriers for the adoption of generative AI in the enterprise? So from a McKinsey point of view, what was the driver behind this, and why did it get adopted to that 72% point? What are some of the success factors that you have had with it?
Well, I guess the impetus behind it is tech enabling our people and recognizing the importance and what GenAI can do for some of our more kind of manual type tasks that really are, sort of take away from the sort of much more creative or problem solving time and solution generation time. So that was the impetus and the recognition of what generative AI could do. It's been a huge lift, and we have a whole team on top of it, as you can imagine. I'm also looking at Evan's comment. Well, let me actually, before I'll answer your other point about how do we actually drive adoption. I mean, we've had very specific campaigns that have been focused on different cohorts of folks. We are doing prompt training with all of our different sort of bases. We are incorporating the learning into, our onboarding and our new employee type training. So there's a whole effort around driving the change, whether it be through creating sort of awareness and conviction around the possibilities that are there, whether it be around building the capabilities of our people, whether it be around role modeling. We have a lot of our leaders are role modeling the usage of it and using it in different ways, or whether it's sort of removing barriers to using it by continually making it much easier to use. We've built a prompt library to help people rapidly get up to speed and understand what a good prompt is. We're constantly rolling out new ways of using it. So even though it started out as, hey, I can synthesize your I can synthesize all of the, all the research that's out there just to get myself up to speed. Now we've started to roll out use cases around engaging with Lily as a sparring partner for problem solving as well. So it's a constant sort of focus and evolution to get everyone to change the way we're behaving. And then I think your point about, if you're an SMB, I would not imagine you would create your own Lily, but if you're an SMB, you probably don't have the same corpus of data. But that said, obviously, like so many of the external tools are ones that can be used as well. And, I think over time, it's taking external tools and sort of partnering with external providers to fine tune them for your own sort of context or use cases or content, which is much easier than building it from scratch.
It is, yeah. Matthew, what are some of the use cases that you're seeing beyond Microsoft on the Copilot and other customers that are using this?
Yeah, I think back to those examples, we talked about customer service. I think the other areas that seem to be really resonating across industries is sales. So the complexity, either from a digital sales standpoint or complex enterprise sales, this is really powerful, giving again, the collection of documents and information that a sales individual might need, and giving them the power through having their own personal assistant, their co-pilot, to be able to ask questions and get that information back. The contribution of the contributors that need to be part of the sales steps. Every organization has a myriad of sales methodologies or steps. And frankly, again, human is overseeing those steps, but there's a lot of things that could be augmented and even automated that can be constructed on the back end, so you can actually accelerate that process. I mean, one example I love, in fact, the head of revenue, I met personally face-to-face at the last Culturati last year, was Lumen. And Lumen, as a leading global communications organization, is really reinventing themselves and their business on the back of AI. They've gone in and really rethought through their selling process, all the support mechanisms. If you can imagine, their sell process is pretty complex, big ticket items. And they really mapped that out and then figured out where they were going to use this AI technology to make that happen. And what was taking them typically 4 hours of outreach and processing, they were able to do in 15 minutes. So there's an example of time savings that, if you extrapolate that out into all those salespeople across the globe that they were working with, it's a $50 million annual revenue boost, right, for that organization. That's really hitting their top line. So it just speaks to finding those processes that are working. Sales is another. And then I think Charlotte mentioned this as well, anything that really ties into the complexity of content. I'm talking about, Dentsu, one of the largest ad sort of creative agencies in the world, is utilizing it to reimagine their creative process. Content supply chain, if you take like a Unilever, one of the largest brand makers in the world, how they are dealing with content, everything from the actual brief to driving that through. So you're seeing these again and again where there's complexity in the business about bringing content and the synchronization of content to create a proposal, all the way to create a creative brief, you name it, legal brief, contracts. You're starting to see those themes really come to bear, because really this technology is quite good at that, synthesizing, clarifying, writing, or even editing in that process, and shrinking that sort of beginning to end, and the quality of it.
So,
Yeah,
Charlotte, you want?
oh no, I was just going to add on two small anecdotes under what you said. So on the sales side, one of my clients that is a sort of a technology player, they had sort of cut off being able to sell to SMBs because the cost of sale was so high. And actually now with generative AI and the ability to actually have, automate large portions of the outreach and lead generation and even, engagement with some of the customers, they're able to add, thousands of new potential target customers because of that. So that's one. And then the second one is, you were talking about the creative process. We're seeing marketing. This is a huge place where we're seeing a lot of generative AI, and the generative AI in marketing is enabling real sort of personalization at scale. Learning and understanding from and sort of like content generation that can be tailored very specifically to an individual in new ways that, formerly would have been cost prohibitive, but now are things that can be done. So I think that's another, marketing's a place where that sort of bringing together the ability to, leverage AI to target together with generative AI that's like lowering the cost of the creative process is quite compelling.
There are questions flowing in on the chat, but I wanted to focus on two things that we want to talk about before we jump into the questions. One, Charlotte, especially from you, when you started off, you talked about this change in operating model for adoption of generative AI into enterprises. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. And so it's less about change of operating model to adopt it. It's change of operating model to capture the value from it. So if you think, for example, and I can give you an example, some of the places where we're doing a lot of this work, I know we're not supposed to be talking about code generation and but if you think about companies in their product and engineering organizations where a ton of people are rolling out, GitHub Copilot or GitLab or one of the other tools, right? And Matthew, obviously GitHub Copilot is near and dear to your heart. We have a partnership, so it's near and dear to our heart too. And they're saying like, hey, when we roll it out, there's a big spike in adoption, then it comes down a little bit. And some people are saying, well, do we really need this? The reason why we're seeing that and the difference between those that continue to drive up adoption and value are the ones that basically say, we're not just putting the tool out. We are changing the product development lifecycle. We are taking, for example, the PMs and the developer and the engineers and condensing the time that you go back and forth between like ideation and requirements documentation and testing what works and what doesn't. And actually you can condense that into such a much from weeks to days, for example. And so folks that are able to do that and then recognize that, yes, there's an element of code generation that will be automated, but that doesn't do away with the need for developers. The developers might move from being more about like actually doing tasks to systems designers. Like, how do we understand how to develop the right parameters to identify the bug fixes? Obviously, that's going to change over time. The bug fixing and whatnot will get better and better. But this idea of actually thinking about, we have a different set of processes that we go through, and the roles of people that are, along that life cycle start to change. And so to truly get value, we need to rethink not only the process itself, like the product development life cycle, but also, so what does that mean for the interaction model between PMs and developers? What does that mean for the size of the teams? What does that mean for the pyramid versus the diamond-shaped, engineering organization? How do we start to recruit for the skills that are much more about designing a system rather than like, the technical expertise in specific languages and so forth. So, I think there's a lot to be thought through there. And again, and I saw a question that was about, well, does that by definition mean you're taking people out? I think it completely depends on the domain. Like in some domains, it's about reinvesting that time into more product, like more development or different things. In other cases, we are seeing some sort of reduction in the workforce, particularly in places like call centers or clerical work and things like that. But Matthew, you have your hand up and probably something magical to say.
Magical, I'm not sure, but I love your point about models. So if we can hit on that for a second. I've had the opportunity to work with some really interesting legal firms, and specifically one, Clifford Chance, which is one of the largest legal firms in Europe, out of the UK. And okay, if you think about the promise of generative AI in the legal world, it's massive, right? Because if you talk to any legal professional, they wish they had more time and energy to like just get to the thoughtful strategy that they're putting in their legal case versus the just amounts of knowledge and information they have to siphon through, or the emails and all the correspond. So when you bring this to them, the light bulbs and sort of enthusiasm just is bursting in the room. Now, with that said, their model of business is reliant on time. Time is money, right? So they bill by the hour. So if you look at that equation, it doesn't take a rocket science to know, like, okay, now we're going to actually make you more efficient, and you're going to be billing less. So this is like a deterrent in your business. The fact of the matter is, you find people like Clifford Chance that are taking this opportunity to restructure a whole new model of legal services, which that'll be driven by outcomes-based, business value-based. It will be those organizations that are seizing this moment in technology revolution to change the business model at hand. And that they're going to win, because if they don't do it, the firm down the street is going to do it. And so I love that ingenuity. It's going to be a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. But back to Charlotte's point, you might have not thought you could sell a product without human intervention. Now you can. You might not be able to think about how you could do a creative process without 24 back and forth. And now you can do it in the moment with the client in the room.
Can others
With the
hear?
power of DALL-E taking away the creatives, it's changing the process. So it's quite cool. Anyway, I just wanted to really enunciate the fact that as organizations are really thinking through their business and this technology, they need to reimagine.
Excellent. So one thing about the reimagination as we move forward, right? We at Culturati specifically are putting these three legs of AI as we move forward, right? We have seen a lot of automation into systems, and then we are now seeing the augmentation. And the third step we want to see and go towards is agency, right? And this is maybe more specific to Matthew in terms of what are some of Microsoft's plans around the agent technologies, where you have agents interacting with whatever work you want to do and figuring that part as we move forward.
Yeah, I mean, we think this is going to be really powerful and really enunciates back into the value proposition for the business, right? Because as people are chatting, right, there's productivity gains in individuals, but where it really starts to break through from a business value, if you can change the processes on the back end. And so if you think about this agent technology, you can have those agents actually take action on your behalf. That technology has evolved from just being sort of timed or programmed to do X, Y, and Z at certain things, to then actually being able to be autonomous. So those steps are being interpreted by the agent to actually run those steps itself and actually learn. And there's the key, right? The beauty of this technology that's really going to change what had been sort of back office process reengineering for years is that there's a learning intelligence that is, oh, I'm understanding how to ship that product faster or better in the agent technology. And so it actually will route it differently the next time to try to find efficiencies or cost savings. Yeah, and that's really getting exciting. We really had been announcing some of the agentic tech capabilities this last spring. We're seeing more and more examples of how customers are starting to use that in call centers, in freight shipping, in really unique business cases. So we think that's going to be a really powerful area to help support the business value side of things.
Are you seeing that at McKinsey also, Charlotte, in terms of people asking about the next step from going from augmentation towards some of this work being done by agents?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we think about the biggest use cases for Gen AI, in addition to code generation, and in addition to insights and concision, which is a lot of what I talked about with regards to McKinsey's use case and also the Clifford Chance use case that Matthew was talking about. The third one being around multimodal content generation, which we also talked about. The fourth one is the interactive, agents. That's a huge use case. We're seeing it everywhere. All of our clients are trying to, I don't know a single client who's not thinking about what's the use of generative AI in the call center or in it with regards to our, experience, our customer experience, or consumer experience, and even, bots for employee experience.
Yeah.
We're also seeing bots, by the way, for learning and development. So, one telco client that we have, for example, implemented an AI coach, which literally they ingested all of the data on performance of their, field operations and field sales forces. And they also generated all of the sort of corpus of content that they wanted these folks to sort of learn, and basically are constantly providing nudges and insights and access to different, and links to different sort of tools to do learning or so that they can constantly be basically have a coach that's feeding you information live, throughout your job.
Yeah. So again, overall, what we are going back to is, yes, there's code, there's content. It is about the use cases, very specific in each of the areas, and the technologies are always going to evolve around these three areas of automating, augmenting, and then agency beyond that, right? So excellent. So I think we are about 10 minutes away. Are we starting Q&A, Missy?
Yep, let's do it.
And there seem to be some really, actually, because I was paying more attention to the chat in terms of us talking about it, I was not going through all the side chat that is going on. But Michelle Gathers has made a really interesting point in terms of voice response is a good example of breakthroughs from 1990s, and many business models changed to benefit of the customers and the organization. Again, a lot of good points from everybody here. So we'll go straight to some of the questions. And this is a creative question from Bashir saying, how do we quantify the usage of tools? 500,000 prompts? Let me go
I think
back.
that might have been a question for me when I was talking about Lily. I answered that in the chat. It's really the usage of the tool is less important than the outcomes that come from it, which are the 30% productivity time savings in research, as well as higher insights and higher quality of the insights. So I would say, look, the tool usage is valuable just to understand, like if you're trying to make the case for why more people should adopt the tool, you can basically tie tool usage to outcomes, but the tool usage itself isn't necessarily a measure of success.
Right, right. And we have a question from Samir, and Samir actually runs a recruitment business, so he knows what he's talking about. He's basically asking, any chance we go back to what Charlotte was saying about recruitment based on the Gen AI? So maybe you can give us a little bit more detail on your talent management tool.
Yes. Well, and by the way, the recruitment, ours is much more about something that enables us to engage with employees and understand their, with candidates and understand their skills, which is slightly different from what I've seen, what I'm hearing other, like, I know there's a million different startups out there that are basically saying, we can take the entire database of all employees across the world. We can consolidate that for you. We can assess and run everything, through our selection process. We can tell you what the right types of candidates you should have. We can write the job descriptions. We can actually write all of the, the interview questions, and we can serve up 10 people to you with the right interview questions, the right thing. There's a lot of startups out there that are sort of offering the promise of basically automating end-to-end everything about recruiting. And I don't, and in this moment, I don't know that any of them are actually really delivering that value yet. And I imagine that, look, at the end of the day, there will always be a human in the loop, or at least in the near term when it comes to recruiting, or at least that's how we think about it. But I would say, it may be that in a company, the number of professionals that you need in your talent acquisition group is smaller, but it's not going away. And the work that they might be doing is going to change, but it's not, like, I don't foresee a world in which there's like no recruiting team at the organizations or at McKinsey.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, Matthew, you have done several surveys around Gen AI and the productivity, that information that you're bringing together, right? The productivity and the usage and everything else. And a question here is around the fact that will this affect workforce reductions? And we covered this topic a lot before, but I think because this question came up again, I just want you to address that based on the information that you have from all your surveys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get this question asked all the time. And I think Charlotte noted that, yeah, there are some areas of the business in which, yeah, it means that you could do the same workload with less individuals. But most corporations that we're speaking to today are just taking that saved time, that increase in productivity, and realigning that to more focused, more valued work, right? So you might think about it as like, we can do more, sales, more marketing with the same amount of people, and we can sort of put the administrative or low value work through Copilot and generative AI, and we can refocus our people on high value work. And I think that really starts to change the equation. It might even change, as Charlotte noted a little bit earlier, how work gets done and the patterns of work and even the organization. So this concept of, you might start looking at individuals less in role and more as skills or talent that comes together in a more dynamic way to get value to address an outcome, versus you do these things, and it's very sort of like linear. But this is, we think there's human oversight and human value in the actual sort of logic, the judgment of how things will get done. And just like the calculator and other tools, it's going to make us better and eliminate the stuff that frankly isn't high value work. It's not high value in my day, right? And I think we all can relate to the fact that like there's only so many hours in the day, and if we had more time to really spend on the high impact and less on just getting through the email and the drudgery of the other parts, we'd be all a lot more effective.
Excellent. Now, this is great. I know there are several questions coming in, but there's one quick question I have, and this is coming from a research I believe I saw in McKinsey or Charlotte's research itself. Is the adoption of AI within an enterprise seem to happen better if the execs and the top level management is more into Gen AI as a user than others. Is that correct, Charlotte? Can
Well,
you
I
elaborate?
mean, it's mainly in terms of that. When we think about driving change and driving behavioral change in an organization, we often refer to, what we've sort of tested over and over in big transformations as our influence model. And it basically says has 4 quadrants, and it says, and it's proven out that, companies that employ all 4 are far more 8x more likely than ones that don't to truly drive behavior change. And that includes, really driving understanding and conviction so that people understand what is the change that's being asked for them, why, and it's meaningful to them. It includes role modeling of leaders, seeing others behaving the way they want, you to behave. It includes building the right talent capabilities, and it includes, having the right sort of reinforcing mechanisms like incentives or tools and so on and so forth. And so within that context, actually driving, because we see this as a behavioral change rather than just it requires changing how we do work. Having having leaders role model as part of driving that behavior change is quite important. And also having leaders continually communicating why this is important and establishing the conviction in the employee base is important as well.
Yeah. And I'll just add on to that. I just want to double down on that concept. Every room, every week when I'm talking to leaders, the first thing I say is, are you using it? What value did you get out of it? Tell me one exciting thing you've done with generative AI. Right off the bat, if it's going to stick. And I'm telling you, it is not just another technology. It's a whole new model and a way of thinking. And unless you as a leader can understand that and start to really imagine how it's going to play out, it's not going to stick. I mean, it's really takes a top-down sort of engagement. Some of the research that we've done internally, we call it the 11 by 11. We studied individuals that were utilizing the generative AI technology, and those that saved about 11 minutes per day of value. They just felt like they had 11 minutes of value saved in their day. They started to see it forming as a habit. And on the other end, it's 11 weeks to actually get that habit to stay. That's almost 3 months. So this isn't when I get the question, oh, isn't it as easy as just using an iPhone? The answer is no, right? The answer is you have to understand how the technology works. It is switching from a born model of how we think about search every day to a new
Did we lose?
just having a conversation with the technology. It goes. And so I put in the chat about power users, but that's some really great research that shows that the power users are 61% more likely if they've heard it and seen it from their CEO driving this. So it is a cultural change, not just a technology.
Yeah, that's a great wrap up. Actually, we always, when we have these webinars, we think in terms of, yeah, this time should be sufficient, but there are so many around it and everything else that people are doing. And I really want to thank everybody who were asking questions and wanted to learn more about this. I'm sure we'll get more opportunities to talk on each of those specific topics as we move along. And I want to thank both Charlotte and Matthew for this great conversation. I definitely learned more about specific use cases. I'm sure others have done the same, and we will follow up on more in terms of this automation, augmentation, and agency within the AI work as we see in enterprises. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.